I will admit. All right, here they come. Hello, welcome. We'll get started in just a minute. We're going to let folks trickle in.
Hey, everybody.
You can. All right, welcome to SEL for CT's very first SEL week. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. Ashton Gauthier, like who am I? I'm Ashton Gauthier, Director of SEL Initiatives for SEL for CT with the Network for Children and Youth. Before we start, I'm gonna give folks a minute still to come in. But while we do that, I'd love for you to tell me who you are and where you're coming in from in the chat. That would be great. And while you do that, I want to give a special shout out to all of our partners who are making this week possible. We have SEL for US, Greater Good Education Center, Narrative 4, 2-for-1 Sports, Embodied Holistic Healing, Poppy's Planet, Catapult Strategies, Liberated SEL, and the Education Collaboratory at Yale. We're super appreciative to all of these partners and everyone's time that they're giving to SEL Week in an important, very important week. So, all right, I think it's 1:05. I think we can probably get started. So I am so thrilled to have Jennifer Quaye Hudson here to facilitate this, informative and supportive conversation about what educators are doing all over the state with SEL being at the forefront of that. But before I introduce her, I want to introduce Dan Holland. He's our admin assistant, and he's been my right hand through all of SEL week. And he's here to all keep us on track with timing and things like that, because I think that this conversation we could spend a lot more time than an hour and a half on. But Dan, do you have any some reminders for us on tech?
Yeah, just some general housekeeping. Please keep yourself muted during the seminar. If you have any questions that pop up, please feel free to throw them into the chat. And then this is just a friendly reminder that today's session is going to be recorded, and most likely some bits and pieces will be shared across our social media. But other than that, I'll hand it back over to you, Ashton.
For sure. Thanks so much, Dan. Yeah, I mean, the point of this is to really, we're recording these sessions. We want to put them up on our website. We want, SEL for CT to really be a resource. So that's why we're recording the session. So appreciate all of you being willing. All right, let's dive in. I want to welcome Jennifer Quaye Hudson. She is a friend and a powerhouse for nearly a decade. Building relationships to advocate for Connecticut's most marginalized communities. She's an educator and an advocate. Her career is really grounded in her earliest experiences, providing direct services to Black and Brown students and families. With these providing critical equity and justice lens to her work, Jennifer has ensured that her advocacy work is done in partnership with rather than on marginalized communities. Jennifer started Catapult Strategies to bring more voices to advocacy and organizing with the hope of helping community projects achieve sustainability in their work. I'm thrilled to have you here and to help facilitate this important conversation with all of our panelists. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jennifer.
Good afternoon, everyone. So happy to be here with you. And thank you for that warm welcome. It is, I just feel like I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl. So with that, we're actually here to hear from the socio-emotional learning community the experts in the field who are going to share some of their perspective with you and hopefully provide some, enlightening insights into their day-to-day and what's been working, what are some of the challenges and how they work through those things. And so with that, I'm going to have our speakers introduce themselves. I'm just going to call on you in the way that I see you on my screen. So we can start with Tiana. Just your name, what organization you're with, your location, and let's do a little icebreaker. What's your favorite SEL strategy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tiana Brown. I am the Assistant Director of Learning Centers here in Norwalk, Connecticut, Norwalk Housing Authority. I've been in this field forever now, since I was like 14, after school counselor, and now here and a director. You said icebreaker, one of my favorite strategies. This may be unconventional, but sometimes when a kid is crying, they're upset, my favorite thing is, let's go to the bathroom. Let's put some water on your face. Let's wash your face. Let's calm down and come out the bathroom. After, you wipe your tears and now we can talk. I like that strategy because it first gives them an action to do, go walking. Sometimes just walking and focusing, putting the water on your face can calm you down. That worked with a lot of my students that would always kind of get upset and have anxiety about things. So my thing, Miss T, is go to the bathroom, go wash your face, calm down. So just to transition a kid from their emotions to putting their attention on something else.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tiana. Elsa?
No problem.
Good afternoon. My name is Elsa Batista. I've worked in middle school for about 17 years, and I'm at my second year at Newington High School. I'm a world language Spanish teacher, and one of my favorite SEL strategies is using memes for students to be to describe how they're feeling. Of course, we do it in the target language, so sometimes we'll show the Simpsons cartoon using different facial expressions or animals, and I think kids can relate to those emotions and point and say, oh, I think I'm feeling this way, and then we have a sentence attached to so they could put it to words.
Absolutely. Thanks, Elsa. Elizabeth?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Connors. I'm at the Consultation Center at Yale, so I'm based in New Haven. I partner with school districts all over to support a wide array of school mental health services. And so SEL is kind of like a slice of my work. I don't know that I would call myself an SEL expert, but I'm just learning a lot with and from my partners all the time. And my favorite strategy is probably just similar to Elsa, like just routine feelings check-ins. They can happen in so many different ways. And recently with some middle schools that we're working with, they are changing up how they refer to them. They call them tap-ins. And they're also using some emojis. And then I've seen other middle school teachers using their door greetings as just like that emotion focused welcome that also builds skills for students. So thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Jackie?
Hi, everybody. How are you? My name is Jackie Thurston. I'm a special education teacher for the last 19 years in North Branford School District. And my favorite SEL strategy right now, things have been feeling a little heavy lately. So I threw some posters on the wall and we put, I'm grateful for, I'm proud of, and I'm happy for. And daily we just have a conversation and we'll be like, oh my God, you passed that test, and we'll throw it up on the board, or you scored the most points in the basketball game. So it's just like a daily, oh, this is so awesome, we're gonna celebrate it. And it's right up there. And over the last week, it is just filled with dozens and dozens of things that the kids have thrown on there. So it was just something small to kind of adjust our mindset a little, but it's been nice. Nice to meet you all.
That's great. Thank you. And then I'm going to call on my Zoom twins, whichever one wants to go first.
I'll go first. Hi there, I'm Amanda Michaud. I am the Extended Care and Learning District Coordinator for the Farmington Public Schools. My resource that I use a lot is we use Ruler and the moon meter a lot in our school, especially after school, coming in, seeing what color our students are coming in as, and we can kind of gauge how they're going to be for the afternoon, who may need a little more attention than others for that day, or some intentional conversations. We can kind of get a gauge from that.
Hi, my name is Connie Regala. I'm the early childhood coordinator here for the Farmington Public Schools. And one of my favorite strategies for our youngest learners is social stories with real life pictures of them in the stories. So that's been working well.
That's great. Thank y'all so much. So we're gonna jump into our first question. What brought you to SEL education, and how has your perspective evolved from when you first got into the field to now? So, you know, some of us might have gotten into the field as young people. Some of us might have found ourselves in the middle of a career change. What brought you to SEL? What connects you to it? And how has your perspective changed over time?
I'll kind of jump in first, just from I never was brought into the SEL field. I went to school for sports management. So when I got into after school, it kind of opened my eyes to the education world in a different manner. Being in Farmington, we have a lot of initiatives here, but they do have a vision of the graduate, which kind of helped me kind of create curriculums based off that, having that self-awareness and individuality, citizen of the community, engaging and an elaborate collaborator with others. So I was able to kind of see more of that, and it kind of opened my eyes to after school not being so like curriculum and in the box. We were able to kind of go outside the box, which has helped us to kind of get those feelings from others and being able to have those intentional conversations like I had meant, to get people's feelings and understand our students more in outside of the classroom situations.
Absolutely. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I would just say, for me, interestingly, I came to what I would consider SEL kind of recently through COVID. I mean, like 4 years ago, because I tend to hang out in like the tier 2, tier 3 space, supporting students with identified mental health challenges and, figuring out how to do evidence-based mental health treatments in schools. But when COVID hit, all of my school partners, it was like this very universal light bulb went on that everybody needed a stronger tier 1. And even in school communities that I work with in the Southeast, for example, like they may not have had a lot of support historically for doing universal mental health or SEL programming in schools. But, I hate to say there's a silver lining around the pandemic, but I think the level of awareness across the board that I experienced with my partners around the urgency for universal supports for social emotional skill development was just it was just so huge. And so that's actually when I started, calling and consulting with folks that I knew that were really in this space so that I could feel better equipped to help my partners through that process and think about how they could strengthen their tier 1.
Absolutely. And Tiana, I know you had talked about the fact that you had actually gotten into SEL as a young person, or you had gotten into this as a young person. So how has your perspective changed over time?
It has evolved the more years I've worked with children.
Mhm.
I've always been the person that they'll call me, hey, Tiana, go speak to so-and-so. Just having the skill to talk to someone, calm them down. Like I told you, my strategy first, use the bathroom. They may be unconventional, but I was always the person that will want to go there, have me go speak to a student that has severe behavior issues. And what I recognize is that you can't teach someone if they're not emotionally stable, if they're not okay. So that was just my first understanding, that me being the fixer, the Olivia Pope, was that I always had to go and kind of listen to see what was going on with them. And from there, I can kind of move them towards having a seat. Simple things. So I worked as a behavior facilitator for the Board of Ed in Bridgeport, as well as I did after school. So, what I recognize the impact that I can make in after school setting is that now I can create programs or introduce our students to SEL programs that help them manage their emotions. So I think after school just gave me more landscape to develop more programs. And just to answer your question, what I've seen evolve, I think the impact of SEL being taught in schools have helped kids find words and language to kind of communicate what's going on with them. I think SEL is wonderful. I see it through our students where they will say, hey, that person's it's making me feel really sad right now. I don't feel comfortable. And they're using all these wonderful language to express their feelings. And I think it's those SEL lessons that they're learning. Um, when you're able to identify what is bothering you, simple, and then people can listen and then redirect you to a place where, although you're feeling this way, you can manage it, then you can be more successful in education, right? You're trying to get them okay within their body so they can actually learn. So, and I was always interested in children feeling okay within their body, like feeling okay. Like, so my attraction to SEL is something that I really care about how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and also I see you, but I think it's interesting that we sometimes draw these delineations between teaching kids the regular academic pieces and teaching them SEL, when in reality we're teaching it all, so that when they get to become adults and they need to figure out how to regulate their hearts in the working environment so that they can then do their job, right? They have the skills to be able to do that. So thank you for that, Elsa.
It's interesting because before we called it SEL in a school system, what many of us did, we would do regular check-ins with students. Just a regular personality check-in on how you're doing today. And then later on, the more research, if the kid, like Tiana mentioned, if the child is not okay holistically, they're not going to be able to learn. If they're hungry, they're not going to be able to attain the lesson and interact with other students. But way back when, nobody said, are you happy? Are you sad? But they checked in. Somehow you felt that connection with the teacher or the adult in the room. And I think those are early stages of what used to be SEL, and now it's official. Now we're going to talk about content meets the emotional, and how can those two help each other so the students could be successful.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I'd like to bounce off of Elsa and say, as a young teacher coming out of college 20 years ago, they really do prioritize standardized testing, curriculum, make sure you're hitting those goals and objectives on the IEP. It's all legal. But as everyone has said, Tiana, Elsa, if a child is not emotionally available for learning, they will not reach any of those goals. So as a young teacher coming out of college, I was like, yes, I have to make sure I'm hitting everything I need to in the curriculum. And then you very quickly realize this student is having a crisis. There's no way they're going to close that gap with this situation going on. So also, like Elizabeth said, during COVID, I started an online check-in. Hey, I did the mood meter, like you guys had spoken of, started getting in touch with what's going on at home, how are you feeling? And that I still continue that to this day, and I teach high school. Kids will fill me in and there's something going on in their life that I had no idea was happening. It's nice to open up, and that way I know how to approach the situation. No wonder you didn't do your test today, your project today, because you got way too much going on emotionally. So like Elsa said, you really have to meet them here before they're available for learning at all. Thank you for putting the mood meter on there, Elizabeth.
So next question, and I think we talked about this a little bit as you all are illustrating for us how you came into SEL. You also kind of gave us a little bit of your definition, but I want y'all to get a little more specific for the folks in the room who, are on a number of different places in the spectrum in terms of their involvement in this system. What is SEL? What is it? What is it to you? What is it to your district? What does it mean to your kids?
Yeah, I can share. So to me, again, I have very young learners that we work with, and it's just understanding their emotions and how to handle themselves during specific situations, and then providing them with a toolbox of things that they can use to handle themselves and get ready to learn.
Absolutely.
And SEL is not necessarily, you're not feeling great, you have to feel great. It's okay to sit in that space of being sad and angry and upset or anxious. What does that feel like? What does that look like? Depending on the age level, we can have those conversations with the students and have them sit in that space And then how can we move on out of this space? Because the day still goes on. We still have classes to attend to. So that is the goal. Because I know some people, some individuals, and maybe even some educators might see it as, that emotional stuff. No, that's huge. That emotional stuff, we, as adults, when you go out into the real world, if you don't know how to get from here to there, we're going to get stuck. How can we show our students how to get unstuck, but still sit and feel, okay, I'm upset. I recognize that. And this is how it feels. And this is what it looks like. Let me move on to the next one.
Absolutely. Building that resiliency.
And
Yeah.
knowing and understanding that is important too.
I think digging deeper into emotions, but we're talking a lot about self, like social emotional, like hearing others, but it's also understanding others. So having our students, ourselves, staff, different staff, people coming into our programs, you know, people can't just jump in and start talking to someone because it may trigger someone. So understanding and really, again, those intentional conversations and relationships are so important. Those trusting adults to the students, but also staff. They have trusting peers and, you know, people that they work with. You know, if we're not, you know, up to par with our social emotional, you know, well-being, how are our students going to? So I think that's really important and for us.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
see Tiana and then I see Elizabeth.
I think understanding the invisible is really difficult, and emotions is the invisible, right? So when you go to learn, you're learning your multiplication, it's really direct, right? Like you can figure that out. But the invisible with emotions, I think it's just so difficult, right? Because one emotion could be triggered for so many different things. So, you know, defining social emotional learning, it's a hard definition, but it could be learning how to manage your emotions while living in the world with everybody else's emotions. You know what I mean? And I always, when I do workshops, I talk to people like, you know, like the car, you have the dash, right? And then the dash is getting all these lights off to let you know, hey, the engine needs to be taken care of, or your tires are low when you get your little tire sign. We don't have that. We don't have a dash. We have our emotions. That's the dash, right? But it doesn't have those labels. It doesn't have those labels. So I think we're trying to figure that out with social emotional learning, labeling these emotions and trying to figure out where does it stem from. Yeah, the tire is low because it needs air, right? You know, I'm hungry, so I'm hangry. You know, like really just I think it's really identifying the invisible, which is present, ever present when you're dealing with someone. So that's what I, you know, try to tell people. It's kind of like the dash, trying to figure out what's happening with me and why.
That's
Tiana, I
great.
love that metaphor so much. In special education, a lot of what we focus on in our behavioral program is de-escalation strategies is huge. I know a couple of you mentioned that. How to keep a high schooler who's going through it from escalating to a point where they can't turn back. So we talk a lot with paraprofessionals and other staff about de-escalation strategies that work well with particular students. It's really important to have prior to those students walking, you know, building relationships with others. And the other thing we do a lot of is restorative practices. Not every conversation is going to be perfect. Sometimes you might have a conversation that sets off a little bit of a rift in a relationship, whether it's student teacher or student student. So we work a lot on like how to restore that back so that we can continue moving forward.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, did you want to add anything or?
Yeah, the other thing I would just build on, and I also love the car metaphor, Tiana, so thank you for that. You know, I think an element of responsibility is also an important skill to elevate here, because sometimes with educators or school systems who are a little, you know, hesitant about these strategies, they might think that teaching students or empowering students more to be in touch with their feelings and communicating feelings is like a way to get out of academics or an excuse for behaviors, right? And so like, why are we going to give all these feelings, all these attention? It's going to like distract the student from being focused. And I think it's important for us to reframe that some of the skill development we're actually going for is being responsible for yourself and being responsible for your behaviors and knowing that you are capable of managing the stressors that come at you, whether that's in your school day or in your life outside of school. And so it's about holding that high bar and standard for our students because they are capable of success, they are capable of resilience, but they need the skill development to take that responsibility and to be able to navigate all of those things, all those stressors that are going to come at us. So I think the self-management, self-responsibility skill domain is an important one, just to communicate about, because I don't think any of us want us to communicate that like SEL is getting students out of responsibility or self-management. At least with some of the school partners I work with, I know that's something that that we kind of dialogue around sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And as someone who doesn't work in SEL, it is clear to me just by the way that you all are illustrating what it is actually a going into the responsibility. It's not abdicating from responsibility. So
That's right.
absolutely. So this next one, I want y'all to have a little bit of fun with this. I'm going to have a little bit of fun asking this question. We know that there is an attack on DEI in this country right now, making spaces more inclusive and equitable for our students, making sure that there is space for everybody, whether they are differently abled, whether they speak a different language, making sure that there is space for everybody in all of these environments that we have to share with each other, right? And so what SEL resources have you all used that have been most effective in creating inclusive and equitable environments for your students?
In my school, we've been fortunate, and this kind of also piggybacks on another question, which talks about teacher burnout. We have a committee made out of
I think she froze.
admin, council workers. They create, we see our students, I did. Can you hear me? Testing 1, 2. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we can hear you.
Thank you. So they're nice and general, and when creating these lessons, the committee's members kept awareness of others, different perspectives, and their general lessons where all students can have a say-so, not just one perspective or one type of student. And I think that's important for us as educators, because we are grading and doing the academic part, but then we're able to still share in the social emotional part with all students. But somebody else is creating those lessons for us, but keeping in mind the different perspectives of where our students are coming from as well.
Absolutely.
Building off of that, in our school, a few years back, we created what's called a student union, which is a makeup of students from all capacities of the school coming to the administration with concerns or with desires or things that they would like to see changed or anything like that. And they're able to talk to admin in like a really free way, which gives them a student voice. They feel empowered, and it really has made a big change in a lot. I mean, anything from how the SATs are given in our school to school lunches to how are we supporting our LGBTQ students. All of that is coming up, and the students are really running the show, which it's a really nice way to give them a voice.
Yana?
Well, our students, we use MooZoom. It's an online SEL app, and the videos depict different situations that all students are dealing with. But the thing I like about MooZoom is that the characters, the students that are actually acting of diverse race. So, they're seeing themselves on the screen, whether race they are, and knowing that we all deal with the same problems regardless of race, but they can self-identify with the diversity within the video.
That's great.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I could think of a couple of things. I mean, one is that in trainings, I always encourage teachers to do kind of a quick little temperature check with all the students before they do a classroom-wide strategy, and that they're really clear about why they're doing the strategy, so that it kind of brings the students in and has some transparency around, even if it's like, I notice everyone's energy seems a little high right now, let's do a brain break to kind of chill it out, and really invite the students in their thought process of why they're implementing that strategy, and then ask students afterwards to kind of rate it. You know, how was that for you? Even if it's like a thumbs up, a medium thumbs down, give the students a chance to kind of give some feedback, to say what they liked, what they didn't like, what works for them. So then the teacher is kind of building in a feedback loop, as well as some kind of insight on their skill development, so that teachers can get a sense of what's landing well for the students. And so I think that's one thing that can be done. We also usually have advisory groups with each school before an SEL training or implementation, which I would love if students were a part of it, but I'll be honest, and it's usually staff. But we run all of our training materials by them. We make adjustments. We say kind of like, you know, what is going to work well for your students, what doesn't seem to make sense. You know, even looking at like the images or materials or things like that. And so I think that can be really helpful, just from like a system implementation lens, and make sure you're getting teachers and other folks to give you feedback before you even do the training, just so you can head off at the pass anything that you know, might be potentially exclusionary or just not landing right with people.
We also run advisories similar to Elizabeth. Every Friday, our students are in an advisory group, and we actually have them student-led. So every single club and group in the school leads an advisory. For instance, our GSA will be leading an advisory coming up, and they're going to be running an activity from the Trevor Project, which just brings in the perspective of somebody coming out of the closet, what that's like, and the kind of exclusion they feel and the kind of emotions they may have during that process. So just to have different perspectives that they might not have otherwise understood. I am going to drop the Trevor Project called Coming Out Stars. I want to explain it now because it will take a bit, but I'm going to drop it in the chat so that you can access it. But just to get different voices, like Elizabeth said, advisory is such a powerful way to do that.
Connie, Amanda, did you want to share anything on this one?
Yeah, I like the idea of, again, giving the students their voice to have them come up with ideas, and because not everybody's the same, as we all know. So giving them that voice to share what works for them best and what doesn't.
Perfect. I think there's something about the student-led groups, because students gonna let you know. The students are gonna let you know what they need. Okay, so what SEL strategies do you all use to support students with special education services? And that can include multilingual, any number of special education support services. What strategies do you all use to make these students feel included?
I'd like to jump in. As a special education teacher for 19 years. Two things I want to throw out there. One, you want to give, again, with the student voice and the student empowerment and self-advocacy, you need to have these conversations with the student about their strengths and weaknesses, really dive in to say, hey, everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses. Let's dive in and see what that means for you specifically, and how you can use your strengths to your benefit. Really understanding themselves as best as possible, just diving into so much about how they learn. But one thing we've started this year as a department is high school students leading their own PPT meetings. Has been a really awesome way to empower and take accountability of their own program. So that's a new thing we're just starting, and it's got some tweaks, but I will say, it's been incredible. They are taking the lead. They're the ones that are like, this is what I need. This is what I'm good at. And it's been a game changer. And this came from a colleague, this idea, and we've all run with it, and it's been wonderful. So I thought I'd share that, as maybe you can try that in your district as well.
And Jackie, I imagine that takes a number of years of making sure that they have the skills that they need, the language that they need.
It's all about teaching every part of it. Yeah, you work them through it and you work up. We usually have their juniors and seniors running those meetings. Like by freshman year, we're teaching them what is an IEP, what does it mean to have accommodations, modifications, goals, all the parts of the process. And then you have them start verbalizing this. Well, Ms. Thurston, this is my area of need. These are the things I'm really struggling with, and this is what I need to close that gap and help me out. And they, as they understand themselves, they see, wow, I have a lot to contribute. I have a lot to give, and it helps the whole process. By junior, senior year, they're able to run it
I
on
like
their own.
I like that, Jackie. My students don't lead the meetings, but they are present starting at the high school level. In middle and elementary school, the parents communicate what they feel, the student needs to know, as well as the parents and case managers. But at the high school level, you are invited. This is your meeting. This is what the experts have or the data. Now, what do you feel? Where do you want to go from here? Do you agree with what the teachers are saying? But I think that's a wonderful self-advocacy and empowerment of what can you do with what you can do. For multi-language learners, we have many students from Spanish-speaking countries, starting to give them the vocabulary in their language of the different feelings. So at the middle school, we did the mood meter. So my mood meter was in English and Spanish. So our multi-language team, they do different activities with the students to make sure that, because as a Latina growing up, you did what you had to do. That's it. There was no, I feel sick. No, you go to school. There is no, I remember my sister said, she's an adult now, a social worker. She's like, I remember my counselor wanted to speak to me in middle school, and I wish mom would have let her. But my mom at that time said, no, you're not crazy. You don't need to go speak to anyone. And I wish back then we would have understood, because my sister needed to speak to someone. But that was just culturally for us at that moment. That wasn't something we did. We don't go talk to people. We keep it in the house. But now our students have an opportunity to be able to have different adults to go to and venues and vocabulary to use in spaces to say, this is what I feel, and this is, I think, what I need. Who can help me?
And I think this is so incredible because when you get to the college level, right? And not all of our kids will go. Some of them are going to go to trade school, but no matter what you do, you are expected to advocate for yourself. You are expected out the gate to have that language, to have that confidence, to advocate for yourself. So what are the things that we're doing to build the young people up to be able to have that confidence and be able to advocate for themselves? That's incredible. Tiana, did I see your wheels turning?
Yeah, I was actually gonna just, and I'm sure Connie's probably I think we're on the same wavelength, but for our younger students who are still kind of, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Just still trying to figure out, but like having those emotions, but be able to walk away and kind of go to, safe spaces in our programs. After school is a very overwhelming time. I mean, we can have a class or a cafeteria of 60 to 100 kids with 10 adults, and there's loud noises. So having these spaces, and I know in our preschool classrooms, we do have calming corners where they can, view those mood meters or kind of showcase, students with, special needs, be able to, point to visuals or utilizing fidgets to kind of help calm their body down, just being able to kind of get them in a space where they feel comfortable. So we've had a lot of students who have had those kind of, worries of coming into program, transitioning from a classroom of 25 kids to, again, that big classroom of a calf, that might be a little overwhelming when you've got a little kindergartner all the way up to 4th grade. So mixing those ages. So you kind of have to just mix it up and have those, techniques. Are you gonna jump into it?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say the same thing. And like for our mood meter for our preschoolers, we use their faces so they can put their face where instead of reading the words.
Yeah, it's so interesting that so much of SEL, what it sounds like to me, and you all are teaching me, and I'm learning, is the flexibility of it. I think education back in the day was so rigid. No, you're gonna do this. You're gonna go to the next class. And this just allows us to incorporate being a little bit more flexible with our kids. Okay, there are 100 kids in the cafeteria. How can we be flexible to make sure that everybody has what they need? Tiana?
Something else. Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Tiana.
sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I was just gonna piggyback on what all the ladies said, just creating that space, especially in after school programs where they just transition, where we don't have a common area, but we do have some other classrooms where the kids can go, where there's less kids. There's some flexibility to move them around and link them up with the staff that they really like that can talk to them and calm them down. Yeah, she's nodding her head. Yeah, so I just wanted to piggyback on what you ladies were mentioning, because we do it here at our after school
those
program.
intentional conversations to build those relationships is going to get you know, kids who may not have, you know, that diagnosis of a special services, but have these, you know, uncomfortable feelings of new people and new things. So just having that, again, that trusting adult, or even a peer model. That was another thing we were going to talk about, was just having those peer models, those older friends, those our fourth grade ambassadors, to help out our new students who may start, you know, pair them up to kind of have someone who is with them to walk along the, you know, something new to them until they feel comfortable. So
I agree.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I also think a lot about the differentiation of options and supports for students that have that tier 2 and tier 3 level of need, whether they're special education students or whether they're general ed and they just have a tier 2, tier 3 level of need, and what that looks like to the other students, how that's talked about. And so in some of our SEL work we talk with teachers about how important it is that you normalize that everyone's human, everyone has emotions. We all have times where we need to utilize our skills to pull ourselves together and refocus at school. And we encourage teachers to create like a short list of cool choices or whatever they want to call it, and introduce that to the entire class, you know, to destigmatize the utilization of some of these cool choices. But also because you never know when a kid is going to have a tier 2 or tier 3 day, even if they're in general ed. And so, you know, we talk about how some of the things that teachers may, you know, historically sort of reserve for just students that have IEPs, you know, what would it look like to make that available as part of a broader conversation with your class or with your grade level, and say, hey, if you're feeling some kind of way throughout the day, here's a hand signal you can give to me or way you can request. And yeah, it's fine to pick up a fidget and bring it to your desk for a couple minutes, or go put some water on your face. And knowing that not everybody is going to utilize those choices, but just introducing it in a universal way to destigmatize it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also want to jump in because Elizabeth reminded me that, yeah, every student could utilize these kind of strategies, and don't miss the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody you notice is having that kind of day. Even if I had a student, I didn't even know who they were. I just saw they had tears in their eyes and they're walking by my classroom, and I was like, I just jumped in and said, come on in here, let's chat. And they opened up, and it turned out there was a big thing happening that they hadn't been able to express to anyone. So just not allowing those opportunities to pass, and just being really cognizant of what's going on around you, because it might not be the tier 2, 3 or special education students that need that moment in a cozy space or a safe person to talk to.
Absolutely. And I just want to personally thank y'all, because, you know, y'all are doing a tremendous job in this field. You know, in my own children's school, my fourth grader is going to need some additional supports, and I was very worried about the stigma. And you know, we all have that moment where we're like, what's it gonna be? And she was like, girl, I'm not worried about that. Everybody has something. My 9-year-old, I was like, okay, so they're doing something in the system that is really creating a level playing field to communicate that everybody is learning differently in some way. Everybody has a need that is going to be different from the next person, and I just need to focus on what my need is. And I thought that was so beautiful, and I was like, oh, okay, it's changing. It's changing. All right, this next question. What barriers have you faced in addressing equity through social emotional learning, and how have you worked to overcome those barriers? And so I heard you all talk a little bit about some of the barriers that you face, whether it be a colleague or two that is like, no, we're not doing all that over here. Or what are some of these barriers that you all have faced in incorporating equity into this stuff, and how have you worked to overcome them?
I think it's been mentioned that a lot of conversation has been around how valuable, how impactful SEL is. Or like to Elizabeth's point, no, you're getting the kid out of learning. They get to leave, not do their work, and they go meet with Elizabeth and talk about her feelings, and she's not doing her work, right? All those, you know, people's perspectives on SEL. That's one of the barriers. For me, now I am the assistant director here, and we've created a culture that SEL is important. So, in my little bubble, we're working with our staff, and I can say at first our staff didn't totally buy into why we're doing SEL three days a week, right? But we've been doing intentional SEL classes now for about 4 years. And as staff started to teach these lessons, started to engage with the students, the proof is in the pudding. They started learning why this is impactful. So I think, to get over that barrier was to stay focused, continue to do it, and have people, recognize the value on their own. So that's what we experienced.
Yeah, going on to that, we use Second Step in preschool here. And that's how we teach, and also modeling in the classroom, I think, is important too, both with peers and teachers.
Absolutely.
We have some barriers similar to Tiana, where I hear a lot with my behavioral kids, that's a bad kid, or they're just being lazy, or a lot of jumping to conclusions about a child and their actions. So just making sure to have those restorative conversations and talk to teachers, educators, para-educators, because it can get frustrating working with a student who's refusing to work or not motivated, but to give a little bit of, enough background or give some perspective so that they understand where they're coming from. But yeah, we, as someone who works in behavioral programs, I do hear that, like, this kid's just lazy, they're not doing their work. So we have to cut that stigma and cut that, jump into that conclusion and make sure they understand what's actually going on.
Yeah, and I'll just build on this to say that variability in SEL implementation is in itself an equity problem from my lens, right? So like if Jennifer's student is receiving, all of the feedback and skill development that she's receiving around this, like whether it's, I'm sort of curriculum agnostic too. So I think there's a lot of different ways that people can do SEL well, but like what your student shared with you, Jennifer, is like a good signal that those solid conversations are happening, right? But if there's a neighboring school or school district where those conversations are not happening, to me, that's a definition of inequity, right? And so we think about how do we level the playing field for all of our students in Connecticut and across the country. We want everyone to be implementing good, high quality stuff so students have these skills. And I mean, I think there are lots of barriers to that. I mean, certainly kind of the attitudinal barriers, which I think have been well covered by the other panelists. I certainly face that a lot in my work, but I also think there's concrete time barriers that teachers are up against. I hear teachers always saying, like, I need these things to be super, short, targeted, and also well integrated into instruction. And so like Jackie, you were saying, you didn't learn some of these things as part of your toolbox when you were in teacher training. And so I think we need to kind of look at how are teachers equipped pre-service, and then how good are SEL strategies in being really efficient and really well integrated in the curriculum. And, I wasn't trained as a teacher. And so I feel like sometimes this is a real shortcoming for me as a trainer, because I can tell you about kind of the SEL strategy, and I've been in a lot of classrooms, so I've kind of seen it happen. But if you're an English language arts teacher, in 7th grade, I don't have that training or that lexicon to tell you, like, how do you really integrate it in your curriculum? So I think we need more people who are cross-trained across mental health and education to like help with this.
I'm going to jump in, just like what you're saying is kind of what I was just going to say is we have so many students who come in with such a variety of backgrounds, with either it be behaviors or trauma or anything. It's kind of like not all SEL, PDs or research are like one size fits all. Like there is so many things that it may, be an overall spread, but there's so many links to so many different things to help children in specific ways. And I feel like, again, that one of our barriers is like you train one person and then they leave. And then you have to train the same person over and over again. In after school, I don't have, I got high school students working with young kids. So teaching a high schooler their emotions on top of another kid's emotions, but you're also doing a job. So there's just so many, avenues of how to teach, again, a high school student all the way up, and we're not classroom teachers, so we don't see all of those, or we don't have all the other embedded PDs like others. And I think that SEL is just, there's so many things, so depending on the student.
So Lindsay in the chat said, we struggle to get parents to understand that SEL is just as important, if not more important, as academics. Like Jackie has said, if a child is not emotionally available, they will not be available to hit the academic goals. And so that, and I'm reading that because that gets to my next question. What barriers have you all found in communicating the importance of SEL to parents? What challenges have you found? And what do you say to those parents?
So I talk to parents quite frequently about this stuff at our even our preschool level. And it's really hard to explain to a parent that you know, what is being done at home is not the same as at school. At school, we make it a teachable moment. And I think that sometimes parents have a hard time grasping that concept. So I just kind of try to explain it to them that, you know, we don't talk about the situation until their body's regulated. And then once they're regulated, then we help give them strategies to use for the future and what they can do instead of, you know, handling it the way they did at that time.
One way that I found through talking with parents is approaching with positive comments home and emails home prior to getting into any of the behavioral stuff. Parents sometimes shut down when you're just getting a lot of negative feedback. So right off the bat, I recommend new teachers that I mentor, start setting positive emails home, get to know the parents, build a relationship with the parents, let them know that your number one priority is their child and your child's happiness and safety and well-being. And after that, I find the rest of understanding, you know, struggles that come up or understanding the importance of SEL sort of all fall into place because they trust you. You're building a trusting relationship with the parent, but also they're like, okay, you're not just going to contact me every time my kid gets written up or whatnot. So just making sure you're building that relationship. I know that's somewhat common sense, but for new teachers, I do try to let them know you should be contacting parents well before you ever have to call them about something wrong.
Absolutely.
To Jackie's point, I see that Jackie is just practicing SEL skills with the parents. Sometimes you're not labeling it. You're not saying, hey, I'm doing SEL. No, you're doing SEL with the parents. So that's I like that approach. I'm sorry, my phone.
Sometimes we have to gentle parent our parents. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
And
Can I add to that too?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. And I mean, I teach preschool. So sometimes we're also that first interaction that parents have with teachers. And, you know, a lot of parents come to us like, how are you preparing my kids for kindergarten? How are you preparing them for kindergarten? It's all about academics. So that's kind of that barrier that we were facing. And then after COVID, we decided to just make a SEL program at our school where I just travel to the classrooms every week. And I think once we started doing that and parents actually started seeing how important it was, we kind of broke through that barrier and they started to understand more how important it was. We get less of the how are they going to be ready for kindergarten academically now. So we've broken through a little bit, but we're still working on it.
Does anyone else want to jump on this question? We're good. Go ahead, Elsa, sorry.
No, real quick, in terms of communicating with parents, just like we send our newsletters to the school community, we tell the parents what we're doing in terms of SEL in the school, as well as the academics. And I think this was a previous question, barrier for teachers. Sometimes we practice with new programs, then you get used to it, and then that program didn't work or the grant expires, then you got another one. So in terms of an educator, sometimes that can be a little bit of a barrier. We just got used to ruler, but that didn't work well. Now we're going to get used to this one. Okay, this is working. But the good thing is that the surveys that we put out, like students say this is working, this is not working, teachers as well. And it helps us move forward and choose better things that will work for our students overall.
So also that actually is a great segue into this next question. All of you have kind of spoken a little bit toward the challenges of incorporating SEL, the challenges of getting families to come along, sometimes getting people in your building to come along. And so as you all are doing this work, you're sending emails, you're developing relationships with parents and with kids, you're convincing people across the school building, you're doing all of this work. How do you address burnout or compassion fatigue while building a teacher's capacity to teach SEL?
I had a moment recently. I think that it's the political environment and everything is kind of compounding on everyone at schools right now, and people are feeling it, very stressed. So the other day I had a couple colleagues and they looked like they were on the edge of their wick. Like they looked burnt out. I said, you have to recognize that you have to work-life balance. You can't be taking like so much of this home. Make sure you take your 5-10 minutes to like go regroup. One thing I found that they were doing is they were going into class and immediately like, okay, this is the work we have to get done. And this is, they just like went 1,000 miles per hour in every class, feeling like they have to get so much done and they have to reach this component. So I said, take like 5-7 minutes at the beginning of class and just like, hey everyone, how are you? Like, what's up? How was your weekend? Like, just take yourself down a level. And all the kids felt it too. I mean, the teachers were like, and as soon as they took that 5-10 minutes to like, let's just not talk about, the scientific method right now. Let's just talk about, how are you? How's your mom? Did you get your learner's permit? And that made all the difference. The teachers are like doing that every class, and you could see they just said, okay, why am I putting all this pressure on myself? But I'm a big work-life balance person. Ashton knows this. Like, you got to find your hobby and make sure do your run club, do your ski club. Grading can come later.
We offer some PD to our staff, like about self-care and mindfulness, not just, PD about early ed, but we offer, PD and stuff about self-care and ways to take care of yourself and treat yourself as well, and give them credit and stuff for that. So not just about your students, but about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's so important. I'll just build on that. I mean, I see schools doing this in so many wide-ranging and innovative ways. And some of the schools I work in are in Florida, where we've not, been permitted to say SEL for the past 4 years. So this, this current socio-political climate is like not so new to me on some fronts, because we've been doing this work already in very politically conservative areas. But we refer to these social-emotional learning strategies in those communities as being trauma sensitive and ways to build student resilience. So, one of the things that I notice that a number of the schools there have done is talking about having an entire trauma sensitive school environment, right? And so that's about the staff well-being as well as the child well-being. But I think it just is the same as having an SEL environment, or whatever you want to call it, a positive culture and climate for the whole school building, because the adult wellness has to be in there in the whole scope of what we're doing as a school community. I think leadership is very powerful in this space, like what the administrators focus on and what they allocate PD time to, and how they're checking in with people individually and have structures as a group. But I do think that it's got to be just like SEL implementation. It's got to be like a whole school, whole team approach, so that staff feel like they're coming into a work environment where they're supported and they're connected and people know who they are, and that if they're having a tier 2 day themselves, that they know what their options are. But I also think that having peer-to-peer supports around SEL implementation can also be really protective, because teachers sometimes feel like, I can't do one more thing. Like this one little mini strategy, I'm sure it's so impactful, but I'm so overwhelmed. Like, just you can't even bring that in here. And I've had administrators too say, I cannot bring one more thing onto my teachers because I'm so protective of them and everything's so heavy right now. So I think, giving teachers choices about what they want to implement, how they want to implement it, the pacing of that, but also building in some peer-to-peer support, like who's on your buddy system in the school that can come and help you trial out that one strategy on a Friday that you choose, or whatever it is. I think sometimes the structures that we can put in place to support implementation can have byproducts of supporting staff well-being, because teachers are just doing so much on their own, really.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, for the folks out there who are parents, and I know that that's many of us, even in the way that we manage our households, how do you keep your children emotionally regulated if you yourself can't regulate your own emotions? And so as you think about building leadership, you're thinking about the leadership of the teacher within the context of the classroom. If I just got a divorce and I'm dealing with that in my head, and now I'm trying to console a crying kindergartner, do I have the emotional capacity to do that? And what are the supports in the building that are scaffolding me in my workplace to be able to hold all those big emotions of those 25 little people? So absolutely. Tiana?
I wanted to add to Elizabeth's point and to your point. Our staff, we started out having staff teach SEL lessons 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And what we recognize with our staff, they're saying, hey, Tiana, it's just sometimes not enough time in the day to, really have a really thought out, meaningful lesson. So we scaled it back. So to support our staff, we listened to their needs, as well as I just did a workshop with them doing SEL lessons that are practical too, right? Like, as we do Zoom lesson, that's our source for the curriculum, but we let them know you can modify it. You don't have to do the same, because the kids get burnt out themselves of doing something the same way all the time. And we say you can modify these lessons. You could chunk the lessons. Like, you could say we did this half of the lesson today, then you could do the other half of the lessons tomorrow. So we let our staff know it's a lot of flexibility on how you do it, and you could create your own pace. Our goal is the bigger goal. Are these lessons being taught, and are they thoughtful? Are the kids walking away from it? So how we support staff is just kind of listening to them and supporting them where they are, and giving them the flexibility that they can modify or reduce or increase however they can do it. So I think that's really helpful with supporting staff in that way, of just giving them some rope to say, hey, can we scale back this week? So I think some flexibility really works with supporting your staff when they feel burnout, to your question.
I think that's important, Tiana, because like I mentioned, here we have lessons prepared for us. For example, September, we have building connections because students are coming in. October, goal setting. November, school spirit. February, relationship skills. But within that, we have the flexibility to choose the different activities, how to guide the conversation. Like, these are guides, but we don't have to hit all what's underneath the umbrella, which is, thank you for not putting that pressure. And then we open up the conversation to, how are your friendship relationship and familial relationship and romantic relationships? And students can spend more time on certain topics they feel more connected to.
I agree. Thank you.
And even giving the teachers flexibility of doing it in a small group setting rather than a whole group setting, because that can make a difference too.
I want to point out something our school did recently that I helped build staff morale. Right behind me here, a bunch of sticky notes on the wall. I'm actually in the faculty room right now, and our admin created time to do interdisciplinary walkthroughs where we were just walking through to find like amazing things that our colleagues who we never get to watch teach do. And 10, 15 minutes in each class, popping in and out, and you're working with teachers you rarely speak to, but these are all celebrations and accomplishments from around the school, from teachers all over, and just small recognitions, accomplishments, shout outs. Always important to keep teachers feeling empowered. And also the power of yes. When an administrator is willing to say yes to an idea and start lighting the fire of creativity within you, that really helps teachers from fatigue as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank y'all for that. Okay, we're coming up on the end of our questions. And so what I want to do is to create some room for folks who are watching to get involved as well. And so for this next question, I definitely want the panelists to get to answer, and then I want to sort of open it up. Can you share a story or an example where SEL created meaningful change for a student, educator, or community? For a student, educator, or community?
I wanted to do a little shout out to a program I was recently involved in. One thing I have found that's brought some really wonderful ways to bring the community together in an SEL fashion is building global connections and really understanding global competency within your school and community. I was able to do what's called the Fulbright Teachers for Global Classrooms, where I studied for a year about bringing global competency to the classroom. Then I got to go to India. But what I did was I got parents, students, classrooms, like the whole community got involved. There were fundraisers, there was donations. Every class created something for the students in India. When I went, I brought like hundreds of gifts and presents, all homemade cards. And then I had ways I was Zooming with all the classrooms when I was there. It opens up perspectives. It builds empathy. It's the idea of like opening the world to your classroom really helped build natural SEL skills in a fun, exciting way. So I am going to drop in the chat a couple of other opportunities for teachers to get fully paid grants to travel. I think traveling and bringing the world to your students is a great way and really impacted my community. To this day, I still have students like, remember that time you went to India and we talked to that? Like, this is 5 or 6 years later. So I'm going to throw in a couple of the other, it's an NEA fellowship, and there's a whole list that I can send. So I'm going to post that, but I do think those are great opportunities for teachers.
I wanted to add to Jackie's story. So I've been working here at 20 West, where I'm at. I've been working here for about 10 years. And prior to becoming the assistant director, I was the lead education coordinator for a middle school and high school program. And we created a girls mentoring program. So now these girls are 25 and 26, and they reach out to me on Facebook and say, hey, Miss T, I was just thinking about you. I was thinking about those wonderful programs we used to do. One of my students said, hey, I'm studying to be a youth leader. I really appreciate it when we had our girls chat, our meetings. I had one student reach back to me and say, do you know I'm becoming a chef? Because I really appreciated when we did Teen Iron Chef at our program. So right now I have these young adults reaching back to me through Facebook, just checking in to say, hey, the things that we did at our program was really focused on building them up emotionally as well as academically. Now we see the fruits of it and they're reaching back to say, hey, this impacted my life. So I think, those are those little golden moments that lets me know. And they even mention not just me, our staff, that what we did impacted their lives. And them being 27, 26 years old, wanting to share that after so many years, it really mattered to them. So yes, our program, I enjoy that. I always love my time with the kids more than being administrator, but here we are.
Other folks have stories?
I mean, due to the connection, I've had students that have gone into teaching and have come back to share that with me. I just connected with a young man who went to Spain and loved it so much that he's fluent in Spanish now, and that's not his native language. And I like those comebacks. Now I'm getting to the age where the students are coming back and saying, hey, what you said, what you did, or the collective of our world language team, because of that, I'm here now.
Mhm, mhm. And we can open it up to the folks who are attending the panel. Any stories or examples you have where SEL has created meaningful change for a student, educator, or community? Okay.
I can share. I'll
I was
share.
gonna say, I won't push it. I won't push it.
I came off mute just to see anybody else would. So I used to work at a high school in New Haven. And we developed a service learning curriculum that also just implemented a ton of obviously SEL skills into that. And what we were able to do is we were able to actually build out an entire guidance or advisory program that existed that drew on SEL and workforce and programs and, Green Job Corps, all these things working together and calling it sort of a pathways program, all building on, SEL skills. And it was a wonderful change for the community, of the school in general. Folks started having better relationships with each other. Teachers were having better relationships with each other, student to student, teacher to student. We started to see a real transformation.
Thank you. Okay. So for my panelists, in one sentence only, as we close out, what is your vision for the future of SEL in schools and in the out of school time space? What is your vision for SEL in schools and the out of school time space? In one sentence. I'm gonna give y'all a couple of moments to gather your thoughts. What's your vision?
I can start off.
Sure.
I'm gonna say creating more programs that nurture emotional growth.
Mm. Yeah. Mm.
For me, for educators, parents, and community members to see SEL as important, if not more, than the academics. Because
Mm.
students will remember how you made them feel and how you touched them. And maybe not the verb you taught them, or maybe not the math formula, but they'll remember you were that teacher that believed in them, or that educator, or that adult.
Absolutely.
Here
I'm gonna
with my
say,
other. Okay.
go ahead, Tiana, you go.
No, mine is quick too. I'm gonna go back to my little analogies. I think SEL, the mortar is SEL and the brick is academics. And I just wish people understood that they go hand in hand. And that's my vision. That's it. That's it.
Yes.
Tiana, your metaphors today are they're just
I can't
on.
say that I came up with them, but they're coming to me. Okay.
This is amazing. I was just gonna say, continue to empower student voices. That empowerment and self-advocating for themselves, that's a lifelong skill they can bring into forever.
I would say to empower students to have their toolbox they need to continue to thrive in school and in their communities.
Yes. Thank you, Connie. Elizabeth?
I would say, my vision for SEL is equity through wider reach of these practices across all diversity of school communities throughout our country.
Great. Well, I thank y'all so much. I am deeply, deeply appreciative of you all and the work that you do for your children, for my children personally. Like, this is selfish of me I deeply appreciate the work that you do. And, I think SEL is so critical to the fabric of the education system. And my hope is that we can, continue on, and at some point it becomes interwoven into the fabric of education in the way that we know that it belongs. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Ashton to close us out.
I can't top that because that was so beautifully said, Jen. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. This was basically everything I wanted for this panel to happen. So I'm so appreciative to you, Jennifer, and to all of you, our panelists, with just so much experience and different, lenses of things. Thank you just so much for creating and sharing the information for others and for our young people specifically. Dan, are you on? Thank you. All right, so I just thanking you guys. And if you guys, for folks on here, be on the lookout for our Empowering Resilient Leaders Learning Lab, where passion meets action. There will be more information to come to your inbox on that, along with a survey. You can do this survey right here. This is on the panel. And then there'll be another one coming, but you will enter a chance to win the Basics of Mindfulness course through the Greater Good Education Center, who's been a partner with us in making, SEL Week and CT happen. So I thank everyone so much for being here. We just learned so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Take
Have
care.
a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.